Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at Vanta.com.
A swift kick in the ass, episode 74.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined, as always, with my best friend, John Curren. We've known each other since we were 4 years old. We're still hanging together, and today's episode is about change at your leisure, spending time in the ways that create positive change. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Tom. I think this is going to be a really exciting issue. A lot of us, especially those of us who work, who have families, who really have full lives, have very little free time. And that can really be very stressful, I think, when you want to do so many more things than you're doing. Where's the free time? But if you really look at how you spend your time, you can use it in much different ways that will lead to a much more positive and healthy life, living on your terms. And the question I want you to really ask yourself is, the way that you spend your free time, are you creating options for yourself with that time, or are you limiting your options with how you spend your free time? I really think that this has everything to do with who you are as a person and how you live your life. Is how you spend your free time, and no one really it's all fun and games and work, and in today's life, there's a lot of gray area between what is work and what is play. It's really become a part of our life. I mean, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
A lot of people talk about a lifestyle design in the self-help world, and really what lifestyle design is all about is about creating opportunities for yourself so that you can support yourself doing something that you love. And I think that's a great idea, but having a good time and lounging around there's not a really good way of making money with that, is there? How do you support yourself? We all need a certain amount of stress in our life, and in fact, when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, that type of stress is actually called distress. And then in the middle, there's actually a positive stress, and that's where you feel exhilaration. That's where you're maybe like running a race, or you're on a roller coaster, and it's thrilling and it's fun. That is called eustress, eustress. And then on the opposite end of that extreme is calm. And calm is good, and we need varying levels of stress in order to live our lives. Too much of any of that it can be bad. Like if you push yourself, if you're too stressed out all the time, you can actually reduce your immunity system and reduce your ability to fight germs and fight sickness. And you can make yourself sick. And in fact, I've seen people just drive themselves so hard that their body just tells them, I've had enough, and they collapse, and they have to just lay out on the couch for a week.
You know where I see that, John? My daughter is going through college right now,
Yeah.
and many times I work overnights, and I'll come home around 4:30 in the morning. I get home, and she's still up studying, and then she doesn't even go to bed. She just goes straight to class. And every time she does that, she gets sick for like days on end. And she's this here recently. She just went through finals. I mean, not finals, through midterms, and she's had this lagging cough now because she kind of puts her body in that stress. She wants to, it's so important for her to do well, and she's such a perfectionist when it comes to that she pushes herself beyond what the body is actually capable of.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I went through the same thing when I was in school, and it's you do want to do well, and you do push yourself, and that's all really good. But there are a lot of people, and I was one of those people, that would have these one night cram sessions. Sometimes I wouldn't even go to class, and right before the test, I'd be up all night studying and trying to cram in all this information. Back then there was Jolt Cola. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, twice the sugar, twice the caffeine.
Oh yeah.
I never drank it in my life, to be honest with you.
It was hell. I mean, it tasted like what I would imagine hell to taste like. But and it made your stomach just feel terrible. I mean, it was probably a combination of staying up late night, all night, the stress, that Jolt Cola, and it just does hell. Puts your body through hell.
And now all they've done is they've changed the name and made them into energy drinks. Whether Red Bull or Monster or what have you. You
Right.
have ones that are going to give 5-hour energy, ones that are going to give these shocks to your system so you can kind of, have like an amphetamine to keep on going.
So you can do that, and you can get by. And in fact, as I was trying to learn how to really study and how to do well in school, I did a lot of that. And honestly, it never really paid off for me. I never got good grades that way. How I got good grades was to take a more gradual approach. Start by going to class, of course, and listen and do everything that the teacher said to do when they said to do it. So you're not spending all this time trying to read, 25 different chapters and learn everything in one night. You're spreading that over, a period of several weeks probably, and you're doing it in very manageable chunks. I learned that if I just did that, school was actually very easy. I didn't spend up, I gave up the all-nighters, and that's when my grades really started to improve. And I think that, once you're out of school, you can actually apply that method to life. I think a lot of people who are trying to live life on their own terms try to pull an all-night cram session. They stress themselves out. They try to cram in all this information, do all this work, just feverishly trying to change their life. And what kind of results do they get? Most people will fail if they try to do that. But if you take a longer term approach, do it in smaller, manageable chunks of work and time and effort, I think you'll have a much better result. And that's really what the bottom line is with, changing at your leisure. Looking at how you use your free time and asking yourself the simple question: does this get me closer to whatever I'm trying to accomplish, or does it take me farther away from it? And if you can answer that question, you're actually going to solve a lot of. You're going to not be arguing with yourself or your spouse as much, because that decision's already been made for you. You know what you're heading for, and what you're doing either takes you closer to that point, or it leads you away. So, in that is a choice, and there will be times where you do things that kind of take you off course, but at least you know that you're doing that and that you're aware of that. Everyone has 24 hours in a day. We all have that. But why do some people seem to have more free time and get more out of life, more of what they want out of life? And I think that those people, a lot of it, that success is due to how they use their free time, and doing things that enable them to create more free time for themselves.
Well, John, I think one of the ways that you can find time is to schedule time. When you have free time, rather than not having a direction, I know that if you're ever like had like a couple days off at work, or maybe if you lost your job and you were laid off and you don't have that schedule to get you out of bed, get ready, brush your teeth, you kind of like meander and you're not really sure where to go. It's very important to have a schedule, even on your free time, to kind of like know what it is that you want to do and accomplish. I mean, whether it's, working out, whether it's, working on yourself or doing a course online or taking a class, in the evening when you get home from work. Scheduling can be very important.
I remember when my position was eliminated, I really wanted to get a job as quickly as I possibly could because I had severance, and I figured out that if I was the sooner I could get a job, the sooner I could have the potential to have two paychecks at a time. Because they didn't give me one lump sum for severance. It was like I didn't have to work, but I'd get a paycheck. And they said they would do that, for 3 months or 4 months. I forget what it is, but I figured the sooner I could get another paycheck coming in, I'd actually have two paychecks coming in, and what a difference that would make in my life. I could really put that money to use. So I looked at it just like you said, Tom. I scheduled my time, and I looked at getting a new job as my job. So I woke up in the morning. And man, I hit the pavement. I mean, I was filling out the applications. I was doing interviews. I was just that's what my life was all about at that time. And before you knew it, I had a job again. And I think too that a lot of people, like you said, Tom, especially if you lose your job, you're kind of meandering. You're not really sure of where to go, and that is a problem. But no matter what you're going through, you have emotions associated with that. You feel a certain way about what's going on in your life, anxiety or stress, and if you can figure out what's causing that anxiety or stress and channel that emotion into something positive, which will reduce your anxiety and stress, that's really going to take you a long way. Even before my position was eliminated, I was up to debt, up to my eyeballs. I was in debt, over 200 grand actually in debt. And as you can imagine, I felt like there was a 1,000-pound gorilla on my back. And the way I channeled that energy and that anxiety and the worry is I looked at my finances, and I wrote down a list of everything that I owed, and figured out exactly where I stood and developed a plan. And so I basically channeled that negative energy into a solution. And when I started, even though I had just kind of started, even at the point of just gathering up that list and knowing exactly where I stood, I actually felt better. It reduced my anxiety because no longer was I guessing, but I knew exactly what I was up against. And then I could start working on developing a plan to get the hell out of that place. And even to this day, even though I've changed my life around and financially, I still have my spending planner that I pay attention to several times a week. I am in it, and I am constantly going through it and checking and figuring out what my next, where I want to go next. And that to me helps reduce my anxiety and my worry about going back to that hell that I was in, because I'm never going back again.
Well, John, I think some ways that some people, if you have some spare time and you're trying to get more done within that same allotted time, there's a saying, kill two birds with one stone. Sometimes you can, do two things at one time. And I'm not necessarily talking about multitasking, but my favorite thing and what you're listening to now is a podcast. It's a great way to learn any audio, whether it's an audio book or it's an audio course, is a great way. So if you're out cutting your grass, if you're working out, you can be learning at the same time. If you're driving your car, I used to have a very long commute, 3 hours a day. And I learned so much within that time because I was always downloading, TTC, the learning company, had these courses that were taught by Harvard professors. There was audiobooks that you can grow and learn. And it's just, you have to find the time to be able to learn. And then you can take those skills when you go to work or what have you and apply them. Another thing that I used to do is rather than going out and hanging out with people during lunchtime, I used to eat alone. And I'd drive my car over to a park and, I had a half hour. I'd listen to a podcast or something while I was eating. And then I caught a quick snooze. I had 30 minutes to snooze because I had to take an hour for lunch break. And that gave me time to kind of rest up and utilize that time later on so I didn't have to go to bed so early.
Yeah, I think you hit upon an important point, Tom, is that you need to learn how, you need to learn what to do. And this is a process. I said before, ask yourself what you're doing. Does it bring you closer to where you want to be, or is it taking you farther away? And I think that some of us, we've been learning, we've been trying, and we've been just kind of spinning our wheels, not getting anywhere. And believe me, I lived that life for a long period of time, and it's hell. But what you really need to ask yourself is, why you keep coming back. Maybe what you're doing is you're digging a hole for yourself while you're trying to fill it in at the same time. You're hurting yourself in the process by your actions. Like, Tom, you mentioned you used to just go out by yourself and bring your lunch, have lunch. Well, I was going out to lunch. I was in debt, and I was going out to lunch with my work buddies almost every day. And that adds up
very quickly, and it's unhealthy. Usually, you tend to overeat because most portions that you served in a restaurant are more than what you're going to really pack for yourself.
Yeah. So, I was in debt, but I was spending money, and I was justifying it because I have a stressful job and I needed to get away from the office. Well, buddy, you can justify anything that you want. But the truth of the matter is that was taking me farther away from what I needed to do, and that was to get out of debt. And only you can do that. Only you can ask yourself those type of questions and figure out, what you're doing and what effect it's having on you.
John,
that's the trick.
Since we're speaking of leisure, I do believe you need downtime. You can't always be trying to change yourself and do things. But, what I do with my family is, since we do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's an exercise that we do together. And, rather than me going somewhere and being always away from my wife and my family, to go work out and almost, where that's putting a very selfish priority of me and taken away from my family, I try to incorporate it so we're all involved. And when we do activities on the weekend, we do things like going to the park, or we do fun things together. We go to the beach, whatever it is. We make sure we try to spend that time together. But it's also being active rather than just going to a movie and sitting inside, or sitting inside the house. We try to get out and do things together, and I think that helps because you're getting active, you're getting your exercise in, but you're also getting your family time in, which is the most important.
Tom, what you said is very important, and I totally agree. You're using your leisure time productively, and you are, even though you don't even realize it, you are creating a path to living on. You're living on your own terms is what you're doing. if you want to lose weight, if you want to be healthy, if you want to spend time with your family, why wouldn't you do exactly what you said that you do? You exercise together with jujitsu. That also helps, with building self-confidence. If you want to build self-confidence, start taking jujitsu, or lift weights,
or yoga, or whatever it might be. It's something that makes you feel healthy. Because, John, you sent me an article the other day that was awesome about leisure, and this is something that I know John wants to do, I want to do, my wife wants to do. And it was this military veteran, and when he got back from Afghanistan and the war, he decided that he was going to, kind of ease himself back into society. So he took, I think, 6 months to go ahead and track the Appalachian Trail, which started in Georgia and ended up in Maine. And I think it's such a great thing. I mean, he's getting in touch with nature, he's out there being healthy, and it's leisure, but it's also something that's going to be with him for the rest of his life. And he actually turned it into a business, and now he helps other veterans that come over from, coming out of war to kind of transition. They can do this, hiatus with him and go out and spend some time with nature and get to know themselves and get back to the mental state that they were in before the war.
Yeah, what's so interesting to me is how many times I hear people who start doing something to help themselves. And then through that process, they open it up and they begin to help others. And so they're not only just helping themselves, but they're spreading that, spreading that information, spreading that joy. And that's, Tom, that I don't think you need the reminder, but that's why we started doing a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast in the beginning, because we wanted to try to figure some things out for ourselves. We wanted to figure out how to live life on our own terms better than we were. And through that process and talking about it on a podcast, that just opens it up to other people, and it's the sharing of information, it's the sharing of ideas, and that's why we're here, is to not only help our listeners, but we're here to help ourselves as well. And that is, I think that's, like you said, that's being more efficient, I guess, or more effective at what you do and how you use your time. Like you said, downtime is very important, but if you're getting something else out of that downtime, then man, more power to you.
Well, even when we've done a whole show on taking vacation and the importance of spending leisure time without doing anything.
The pull-out method.
Yes, pull-out method of personal change. But what I find is I usually take 2 vacations, John, 2 different types. Okay. I take one that I just got back from Universal Studios and Halloween Horror Nights. Those, I almost need a vacation from the vacation when I go home, because I'm going constantly. I mean, you get up to Orlando, you hit the parks, you walk everywhere, you drink everything, eat everything, then you're back, shower real quick, and you're back for Halloween Horror Nights, and you're on your feet. By the end of the day, your feet and legs hurt so bad that you just collapse into bed. And it's a lot of activity, and it's fun. It's a great time to spend with the family, but it's just constantly, it's like, it's a little bit stressful, as opposed to as either I do a staycation and go over to the beach, or or if I go someplace with my wife to, say you go to Jamaica or you go on our cruise or something where you have a lot of downtime, then I don't just sit around like a slug. I try to use that time to refresh my mind. I brainstorm a lot. I come up with creative ideas. And I exercise. It's great. I mean, my wife go, do whatever we want to do, eat, exercise, relax, and have fun. And I think that's a very important. I think it's important for everyone to make sure that they get that time. Take your week or 2 weeks of vacation if you get it, if you have benefits. If not, try to squeeze some time in, because you need that time to grow as an individual.
Yeah, and you make a great point, Tom. I mentioned earlier, there are only 24 hours a day. Every person has only 24 hours a day, and it really matters how you use those times. If you find yourself not having a lot of free time, it might help you to sit down and write down or monitor, what you're doing during the day, and write it down so you can actually see how many hours. Like, how many hours are you watching TV a day? How long are you in the commute? How long are you sleeping? I mean, you can, once you have a good assessment of what you're doing with your time and how you're spending your time, then you can take steps to make minor changes that you can get more out of your day. The way I've been changing my life through my leisure activities is by getting organized and by taking on these projects that I've had, which are ultimately going to lead to a lot of fun. When my dad died several years ago, he left me a boat, and it's a 20-foot boat, and we've had it for a long time, and it was just a shell. He was working on it before he got sick, and he was ready to put it all together, but he got ALS, and he couldn't work on the boat anymore. His priorities changed. So when he died, I got the boat. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to take over somebody else's project. There are bits and pieces everywhere. You don't know what you have. You don't know what to do. I'm right in that boat. I'm in that boat with the boat. It's, I'm trying to find all the pieces for the boat. I'm not necessarily the most mechanically skilled person, but I'm trying to figure out either how to do it myself or who I can take that to get that job done. This is a goal of mine, is to finish the restoration of this 20-foot boat that's 50 years old. And I'm driven to do that. But that's how I've been spending my leisure time. Like today, for the last 3 weeks, I've been working on the windshield of the boat. It was all in pieces, and I put it all back together, and I stripped it down, and I painted it. And today, I installed it on the boat. And that's such a great feeling of accomplishment. I know that gets me one step closer to having that boat in the water. So it's being productive. Am I always going to be working on the boat? Well, yeah, probably. but I want to get out in the water. I want to use it. And what's the point of having your toys if you can't use them? And I'm so guilty of that. It's just not even funny. But as I get better organized, as I check these things off of my list, I open my free time up, and I'm creating more free time for myself in the process. Like this summer, I got my 12-foot John boat together and started working, and that motor hadn't been run in 10 years. And I worked on it, I got it running, and I've been taking it out with my kids, having a great time this summer, just enjoying it. And so we all have things to do. And my suggestion is, if you feel overwhelmed by having these things to do, write them down, create a list of everything that you need to do. And what that does is it turns it from just a thought to something tangible. And the thoughts will stop bouncing around your head and just causing damage and causing anxiety and worry. And your subconscious will actually kind of take over and lead you to begin completing those things on your list without you really being aware of it. If you were to write down that list and then just tuck it away, bring it, find it a month or two later, you'd be surprised at how much you've crossed off that list. That's just the way our minds work.
Well, John, here's some other tips that I guess before we were talking about commuting, and I was talking about doing two things at once. What I forgot to mention is, if you do have a long commute, consider using public transportation. I mean, if you have a subway or train or whatever it might be in your area, consider using that time to, first of all, you're going to save gas. It's usually cheaper to commute, via public transportation. It's less stressful. And it gives you that time that, you could have sales calls that you could allot during that time while you're traveling. Or most buses or trains now have Wi-Fi. You could, start an online business and do something on the side. You could do an online course. You could study during that time if you're taking an offline course. It's a great way to kill two birds with one stone. The next thing is also outsource. And can be, you hear a lot in internet marketing, but it can also be with your life. So if there's things that you can systematize, if you're cutting your grass every 2 weeks and it's just eating up all your free time, think about hiring someone. Yes, it's going to cost a little bit, but maybe sometimes you got to judge whether your time, how valuable it is, and maybe it makes more sense to hire someone to do some of those menial tasks and get them out of your way so you're not doing it.
That's been the hardest lesson for me to learn over the years. I have pretty much learned it, though.
It's because you're a cheap bastard.
Well, yeah. I haven't had the money to spend. I've had to do things for myself out of necessity, but I recognize that my time is worth money, and when I look at some of the jobs that I would take on, I always try to think about how much time it would take me to do that, as well as the dollar amount of cost. Like, I had some work done on my truck. I needed new rear wheel bearings put on my truck, and I talked to a buddy of mine who's a master mechanic, and he said it's an easy job, but it's really time consuming, and there's a lot. It's just labor. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what, I could spend, several days working on my truck, in just without a lift or anything, and making a mess of my garage because of all the fluids everywhere, or I could pay someone to do that. And I paid someone to do that because my time is worth money. And, I paid the mechanic to do the work on my truck, but, I spent my time with my regular job and with organizing my garage and working on my project boat. And, there's give and take, but to me, your time is worth money, and you can put a dollar amount on that time. And sometimes it's worth it to hand it off to someone else. Just like Tom said, outsource that work.
Yeah, I'm the same way, John. I like to, I still cut my own grass. I haven't outsourced to anyone. It's just one of those things I'm just like, well, I can do it. But other things like where we have carpet upstairs and my wife has allergies, so we're thinking about getting rid of it and getting laminate flooring. And I could do it myself and save money. But I was thinking about it. If I do it myself, it's going to take a hell of a lot of time. I'm going to be on YouTube trying to figure out how to do it. I'm going to be buying all these extra glues or, prep work and all these things that are going to end up probably costing almost as much as if I'd hired someone. And it's going to take me forever. Where if I just hire, some company to come in, they'll have it done in a day or two or whatever it takes, but at least they'll get it done. And, the same thing. I have a handyman and I was like, maybe I could have my handyman do it. And it's like the same thing. I was like, well, I want it done right. So it's better just hire someone that knows what they're doing, has done this day in and day out, and they get it done.
Yeah, and then it's done and it's checked off your list. I think, especially for people like you and me, Tom, that is an extremely difficult lesson to learn. And some things are pretty straightforward, and it is better for you to do them yourself. Okay?
I always think of the episode of Cosby when he failed to call a plumber and he tried doing it himself. And he had like these leaks like shooting all over the place, and it ended up costing him more in the long run.
Yeah, you screw things up, and that's what really kind of persuaded me to hire a mechanic with my truck. I could have done the work, but I didn't have all the right tools to do it. And I also knew that what my friend was telling me was the best case scenario. And I know that I was going to run into issues. And, and you run into those issues, having experience at problem solving can save you time, money, and effort. And it all comes back to those questions about, are you creating options for yourself through the work? Through your free time, or are you limiting your options? And to me, like I said, that is just the way we live our life, and it's who we are as a person. There's a difference between knowing how to do something and actually doing it. I'd like to be able to know how things are done, but I think we need to be open to handing things off if it's appropriate. One thing too, Tom, that I was thinking about it, as far as using your free time, is adding accountability to whatever you're doing. What accountability really means is it means telling someone what you're going to do, whereas you would not want to tell that person that you failed or let them down. And I think that does also play into how we use our free time. If you know that you need to go to school to get a degree and create some career opportunities for yourself, tell your loved ones, tell your friends, talk to the people that you care about and that they care about you, about what you want to do, and that they're gonna keep you accountable, and they're gonna keep the pressure on, so that you keep going down that path, no matter what hurdles you have to go across. My cousin-in-law, he's an aspiring writer, and I just saw him last night, actually, at a family gathering, and I asked him, I said, how's the writing going? He's like, man, I bought Scrivener, but I haven't touched it, and I put the pressure on him. And we're gonna meet sometime next week and talk about some, how to get him going again. But it's talking to people and holding each other accountable and keeping people that you love on those paths, because this is how we use our free time, and it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to cram and do an all-nighter and study to change our life. That's not the way it works. Usually, it doesn't change in a New York minute. It changes over time with perseverance and with work and attention to what you're doing, and constantly reminding yourself, constantly asking yourself, is this bringing me closer to what I want, or is it leading me farther away?
Well, John, another thing that you can do is, if you've ever heard of meetup.com, find a meetup in your area where, you can, no matter what subject you are interested in, you can usually find a meetup in your area. If not, you can start one, and you find like-minded people that can hold you accountable and share ideas and brainstorm. And it's almost like a mastermind where you have, people with different varying skills, but you all learn from each other and it helps you grow. So I think it's a great way to use your leisure time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are plenty of ways that we can be productive in our free time, and it doesn't mean that it's all work and it's no play. I think in today's world, you can really combine the two and have fun, but also get things accomplished and move towards a life on your own terms.
Well, John, I think that about wraps it up. You have any parting words?
No, just, keep on keeping on. Keep asking yourself that question about whether or not what you're doing is taking you in the right direction or taking you farther away. I think that's really going to lead you to where you want to go, much better than anything else out there. And then also keep your tabs on your stress level, okay? And recognize that some stress is important. You have too less, you're going to be, not enough stress, you're just going to be a glob. You're going to be a couch potato and a gelatinous mass sitting on the couch watching TV. Or if you're too stressed out, you're going to run yourself ragged, you're going to burn yourself out, you're going to probably get sick and have a nervous breakdown. That's no good either. So work on trying to find a balance, that optimal amount of stress where you're exhilarated and you're having fun and you're excited about what you're doing, and work doesn't seem like work. It's play.
All right, man. Well, make sure to check out swiftkickinass.com. Sign up for our free membership site. Your email will get you in, and we'll give you a lot of goodies. This is Tom. Thanks for listening. Peace.
And this is John. Talk to you later.